Folks, I try to cover all the latest and greatest happenings from the world of competitive Scrabble, but the truth is, I am still sitting on a massive trove of Nigel Richards games from his incredible career. In this video, I'm going to break down one of my absolute favorites, a game from the 2016 Causeway Challenge between Nigel and world number 2, fellow multi-time world champion David Eldar. Nigel draws too many vowels to start and opens with Obaya for 12, avoiding placing vowels next to bonus squares. David answers quickly with his highest scoring placement of the 7-letter word on his rack, regnant, for 72. However, the R lands in exactly the right spot for Nigel to hit back with diatribe for 94, spanning 2 double word scores. David draws a good mix of vowels and consonants, including an S, and he can play F for 29, but elects to play the computer engine's preferred choice of feud for 30, scoring 1 additional point and shedding the clunky U. The D in the triple lane doesn't actually help Nigel that much here with other appealing spots available. In fact, in this case, he has one and only one playable bingo on the opposite side of the board, Toharoa for 80, giving him a solid lead. With the first blank now in hand, David is in a great position to respond. He'd love to find an 8-letter word spanning both triples through the D of feud, but there aren't any words like that available. Instead, he spots his highest scoring bingo of toupees for 94, while Nigel draws the second blank, giving him an opportunity to find the triple-triple. Just like with David, there's no word like that available, and he settles for his top scoring consolation prize of codomain for 80, retaking the lead. David draws a clunky mix of mostly consonants and can dump them with Marvy for 37 points down low. However, he decides to shed both of the V and K in one go with Volk for 33, keeping the MY combination together with some decent spots for it open. Nigel draws a similarly consonant-heavy rack and spots by far his top option here. Through Eat on the board, he plays Theatral for 44 points, a gorgeous move. Now trailing by 81, David proactively opens new lanes with Mayo for 25, hoping to draw a 7-letter bingo to the triple. Nigel doesn't have a good way to block and takes his highest scoring option of China for 35. David is able to immediately capitalize on his opening with Friand for 91 to tie the game. Nigel can answer with Ritzier for 44, but instead sacrifices points to play Grise for 36 to avoid keeping a lone G without the IN combo to support it. David immediately hits back with his top move of Jelly for 46, keeping an S for next turn, and here Nigel draws an S of his own, but 2 W's to go with it. Note that this game took place in 2016, so I should make clear at this point that neither U or Z were playable 2-letter words yet. Still, although this WoW would not yet have been playable for this reason, Nigel still has a very solid place to play it, forming WAF for 26 points, leaving the promising IPST leave for next turn. However, this is not the word he plays. Instead, he spots an amazingly creative option, Whist for just 21 points, coming 1 space short of the triple word score. He could have played Twist in this same spot for 40, but he's cleverly leaving the T off because the other 5 T's and both blanks have already been played. After Whist, Nigel has sole access to the potentially massive Twist hook, hitting a triple word score in both directions. This is the computer engine's preferred play here and a fantastic example of one of Nigel's patented setups. David now has a serious problem to address, and while he might normally consider a play like Vading for 33 here, blocking Twist has become a top priority. A play like Virid for 28 is a solid block, but not only does this fail to address bingos ending in EST, it also leaves open a slew of big Q plays that Nigel could be gunning for here. So David opts for Valid for only 21 points instead. When specifying that Nigel is holding a T in reserve here, computer analysis strongly approves of David's adjustment. Despite this block, Nigel can still play words with a T in early position, and Town for 45 stands out as a great option here, turning 4 tiles to try and draw a critical U to pair with his Q, as well as the valuable X, which has a lucrative spot available on this board. However, Nigel instead plays Tup for 48, another fantastic choice. Not only does this score 3 more points, it also keeps the O on his rack for next turn. This is important for 2 reasons. First, he'll threaten Coin for 48 if he draws one of the 2 remaining U's. And second, as mentioned before, the O is the only remaining tile that underlaps the Z, giving him potentially lucrative underlaps in a spot David will struggle to access. With X in hand, David uses by far the best X spot on the board and plays Nix for 51. A solid option, but the computer engine surprisingly wants him to spend his typically more valuable S instead with 6 for the same score, keeping the N over the S to gun for ING bingos to the G of Grise and to threaten Quinnic for 36 with a Q draw. Still, the X-Bomb puts Nigel down by 13 with 2 tiles in the bag, and his highest scoring moves are D-Sex for 29 and N-All for 28, both of which will leave him saddled with the Q heading into the endgame. However, the only ways to play the Q now have serious flaws as well. Chin empties the bag, giving David excellent timing, and other spots score only 11 points. Nigel makes an absolutely brilliant move here, playing his Q for 11 on the left side of the board. Once again, he continues to keep the O, the only remaining tile that plays underneath the Z, and he realizes that even if David has the one remaining hook to Chi in the S, he'll struggle to play productively underneath Grise. On the other hand, not only can Nigel draw one of the 2 remaining I's to threaten an out bingo of Lesioned, or the last S threatening Lessened in the same spot, he also guarantees himself the threat of a much heavier hitting N-All, which will now score 48 points with the aid of the extra points from Chin. As an extra bonus, this play also blocks the only playable bingo that David could have from Nigel's perspective, Cruzier into the R of Grise. An absolutely brilliant pre-endgame move from the GOAT right here. In fact, in this game, David did have Cruzier ready to go down, effectively winning the game on the spot. Instead, Nigel's block denies him this bingo and forces him into a brutally difficult situation. However, under severe time pressure, David also makes an absolutely brilliant counter move of the obscure 6-letter Erusic for 24. According to computer analysis, this play wins 50% of the time and is his best available option. However, his true winning chances are less than this, since 2 of his winning draws are very likely to be on Nigel's rack. If Nigel's playing Chi in this spot, he almost certainly has the N on his rack to underlap already, and likely has the O as well for Zoe, creating a spot that greatly favors him. Nigel is also extremely unlikely to have the U, as he would almost necessarily have much higher scoring plays like Coin or Squeg available no matter what his other tiles are. Still, if David can draw the G, he will still win the game here, outrunning Nigel's N-All with Ligs for 20, winning by a 4-point margin. However, after Chi, it's Nigel who draws the G that David needs, and David draws the U he likely expected was coming. After Nigel cashes in his 48-point N-All, David has no winning moves and attempts the desperation play of Sui for 23, hooking Theatrals, which would win the game if Theatrals were a valid word. This makes perfect sense from David's perspective, but of course, Nigel challenges this attempt off the board and goes out with Legs for 20 en route to a final of 535 to 487. This was a fantastic battle between 2 of the top Scrabble players in the world, with elite decisions from both Nigel and David. The 2 would clash many more times over the course of this 45-game event, which Nigel won by just a 1-game margin. Earlier this year, the Scrabble world was thrilled to hear that event organizer Michael Tang would be reviving the Causeway Challenge in 2026, with Nigel and David headlining a murderer's row of the world's top grandmasters. Mark your calendars now because it's going to be an absolute spectacle. If you enjoyed this amazing game, consider subscribing to my channel for more videos about the best games and players from the world of competitive Scrabble. I'm setting a goal of reaching 100,000 subscribers in 2026, and I need your support to pull it off. Thank you very much, and see you in the next one.